In the summer of 1843, a strange-looking man sat alone in his Copenhagen apartment, writing a story about a bird. Hans Christian Andersen was 38 years old. He'd never fit the mold of what people expected, not in appearance, in manners, not in anything. He'd spent his childhood in the slums of Odense, the son of a shoemaker who died young and a washerwoman who drank. He'd been mocked his entire life, rejected by every woman he'd ever loved, told by teachers he would never amount to anything, and now he was famous. His fairy tales were being translated across Europe. He dined with royalty. Children would never know his name, but grow up hearing his stories. But that summer, he wasn't writing about mermaids or snow queens or matchstick girls. He was writing something personal, something that when he finished it, he would call the story of my life. You know this story. Everyone knows this story. A weird-looking bird gets picked on, grows up, discovers there's a beautiful swan all along. Moral: be patient. You're beautiful inside. The world will eventually see it. Disney adapted it. Sesame Street adapted it. There are picture book versions in every language on earth. It's become shorthand about any story about late bloomers and hidden potentials. The phrase "ugly duckling" had entered our vocabulary as a promise that things will get better. But that's not the story Andersen wrote, not even close. Somewhere between 1843 and now, we changed it, we softened it, we sanded down the edges until it fit on a nursery wall. The original Ugly Duckling, the one that came from a mind of man who knew what it meant to be despised, is darker than what you've been told. More violent, more painful, and the ending doesn't mean what you think it means. Tonight, we're going back to the source, to the words Andersen actually put on the page in that Copenhagen apartment, to the story he calls his autobiography. What was he really trying to tell us, and why did we refuse to listen? But before we descend into this story, I want to ask you something. If you believe that the darkest chapters of the stories we tell our children deserve to be examined, if you believe that understanding how we sanitize pain matters, you can help by liking this video and subscribing to the Midnight Archives. Your support helps keep the candle lit and allows us to keep exploring the shadows behind the stories we thought we knew. Now, let's meet the duckling. Welcome to the Midnight Archives. Part 1. The egg that wouldn't hatch. Every monster has an origin story. Every outcast was cast out by someone. This is where it starts, in a nest, in summer, with a mother who's about to make a choice she'll regret.
Andersen opens the story like a postcard. It's summer in the Danish countryside. The corn is golden in the fields. The hay is stacked in the meadows. The sun shines warm on an old manor house surrounded by deep canals. And between the water and the walls, great burdock leaves grow so tall that a small child could stand upright beneath them and imagine themselves in a forest of their own. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. The kind of scene you'd paint on a postcard and send to someone you wanted to make jealous. It's also exactly the kind of setting where something terrible is about to happen. Hidden in those burdock leaves, sheltered from the world, a mother duck sits on her nest. She's been there for weeks now, waiting for her eggs to hatch, and she's growing impatient. The sitting has gone on too long. She's bored, she's lonely, and hardly anyone comes to visit her because the other ducks would rather swim about in the canals than climb up under the leaves to make conversation with a brooding mother. Finally, the eggs begin to crack. One by one, the shells split open. Little yellow heads poke out, blinking at the sudden brightness, making small noises of discovery. "Peep, peep," they say, tumbling over each other in the nest, stretching their tiny wings for the first time. "Quack, quack," the mother duck says approvingly, because that's what she hears. the sound of her children becoming what they're supposed to be. "How big the world is," the ducklings say, looking around at the green leaves above them, feeling the space that didn't exist inside their shells. "Do you think this is the whole world?" the mother answers. "It stretches far beyond the other side of the garden, right into the parson's field, though I have never been there myself. You're all hatched now, I hope." She counts her children. They're all here, except one. The largest egg hasn't cracked. It just sits there, stubbornly intact, while its siblings tumble over each other in the nest. The mother sighs and settles back down to wait. That's when an older duck waddles over to see how things are going. She's experienced this one. She's been around long enough to know the difference between a late hatch and a lost cause. She examines the unhatched egg with the knowing eye of someone who's seen this before. "That's a turkey egg," she declares. "I was cheated that way once myself. Take my advice and leave it alone. Teach your other children to swim." The mother hesitates. Turkey chicks can't swim. They're useless to a duck, just dead weight, a creature that can never follow you into the water, that will always be stuck on the shore watching while real ducks do real duck things. A turkey raised by ducks is a tragedy waiting to happen. But she's already been sitting so long. What's a little longer? "I've sat on it this long," she says. "I may as well sit a little longer." "Suit yourself," the old duck says, and waddles away, and the mother waits. At last, the final egg cracks. What tumbles out is not what she expected. The creature is large, much larger than its siblings. Its feathers are grey instead of yellow. Its body is ungainly, awkward, somehow wrong in proportions that the mother can sense but can't quite articulate. It doesn't look like a duckling. It doesn't look like a turkey either. It doesn't look like anything the mother has ever seen. "He's terribly big," she says, staring at him. "And he doesn't look like any of the others. Can he really be a turkey chick? Well, we shall soon find out. Into the water he shall go, if I have to push him in myself." Those are her first words about her own child. That he's wrong. That he needs to be tested. The next day, the weather is glorious. The sun shines down on the green burdock leaves. The mother duck leads all her children down to the canal, and with a splash, she's in the water. "Quack, quack," she calls, and one by one, the ducklings tumble after her. The water closes over their heads, but they bob up immediately, floating beautifully, their little legs paddling away beneath them as if they'd been doing this all their lives. The grey one follows them. He swims, not just adequately, beautifully. His legs kick in perfect rhythm. His grey feathers glide through the water like silk. He moves with a grace that none of the yellow ducklings can match. "He's no turkey," the mother says with something like relief. "See how well he uses his legs, how straight he holds himself in the water. He's my own child, no doubt about it. And actually, if you look at him properly, he's quite handsome." That moment of acceptance lasts exactly as long as it takes to reach the barnyard. "Come along," the mother duck says. "Let me introduce you to society. Stay close to me, so no one steps on you, and keep a sharp lookout for the cat." Andersen's barnyard isn't just a setting. It's a society, a miniature civilization with its own laws, its own hierarchies, its own systems of status that determine who matters and who doesn't. The noise is overwhelming. Ducks quacking, hens clucking, everyone talking at once, pecking at each other, fighting over scraps. Two families are quarreling over an eel's head, and in the end, the cat gets it anyway. That's the way of the world, the mother duck says, licking her beak because she wanted that eel's head herself. At the top of this society sits a Spanish duck with a red rag tied around her leg, a mark of distinction, the highest honor a barnyard bird can receive. It means she's too important to be eaten. Her opinion is law. Her approval opens doors. Her disapproval closes them. The mother duck presents her children to the barnyard, teaching them to bow their heads properly, to show respect, to say the right things to the right birds. The yellow ducklings are approved. They look right, act right, fit the pattern of what ducklings are supposed to be. Then they see the grey one. "What's that?" someone asks. "He's too big," another says. "He's ugly. He doesn't look like a duck at all." A duck flies at him and bites him on the neck. "Leave him alone," the mother says. "He's not doing any harm." "Maybe not, but he's too big and strange. He needs to be put in his place." The Spanish duck delivers her verdict. "Those are fine children the mother has," she announces. "All of them pretty, except that one. He's not turned out well. It's a pity she can't hatch him over again." "He's not pretty, Your Grace," the mother admits, "but he has a good disposition, and he swims as well as any of the others. Even better, I think. I believe he'll grow up handsome, or at least a bit smaller in time. He was in the egg too long, and so he's not quite the right shape." She's defending him. But listen to how she defends him. By apologizing for him, by explaining what's wrong with him, by hoping he'll become less of what he is. The Spanish duck shrugs. "The other ducklings are pretty enough. Make yourselves at home, and if you find an eel's head, you may bring it to me." That's it. The verdict is delivered. The grey one is not pretty, not acceptable, not welcome. The attacks begin immediately. The ducks bite him. The hens peck him. The other ducklings, his own siblings, shove him away from the food, push him out of the warm spots, treat him like an intruder in his own family. The girl who comes to feed the poultry kicks him with her foot when he gets in her way. This isn't teasing. This isn't childhood bullying that builds character. This is coordinated, daily violence from every direction. "He's too big," they all say. "He's too ugly." As if those are reasons. As if size and appearance are crimes that deserve punishment. Day after day, it gets worse. He's bitten and pecked and pushed and kicked. He's driven from every corner of the barnyard. There's nowhere he can go without someone attacking him. Nowhere he can rest without being driven away. Even the turkey cock, who was born with spurs and thinks himself an emperor, puffs up and gobbles at him until his face turns scarlet with rage. The duckling doesn't understand. He doesn't know why everyone hates him. He only knows that they do, that his existence is somehow offensive, that his presence makes everyone angry. "I'm so ugly," he thinks, "that even the dog won't bite me." His siblings turn on him completely. "If only the cat would catch you, you ugly thing," they say. And his mother, the one who sat on his egg, who defended him once, who said he swam beautifully, finally breaks. "I wish you were far away," she says, his own mother, the one creature in the world who should love him unconditionally, looking at her child and wishing he didn't exist. That's the breaking point. The duckling runs. He half flies, half scrambles over the hedge that surrounds the barnyard, startling the little birds in the bushes. They scatter into the air at his approach, wings beating frantically to get away from him. "That's because I'm so ugly," he thinks. "Even wild birds are frightened of me." He doesn't consider that maybe they scattered because he startled them, the way any small bird would scatter from any sudden movement. He's learned to interpret everything as evidence of his own worthlessness. He runs until he reaches a great moor, where wild ducks live among the reeds. He's exhausted, he's terrified, but at least no one here knows him. At least he can start over. He's escaped the barnyard, but the world outside the barnyard isn't salvation. It's worse.
Part 2. The Wild Marsh. Freedom sounds like a happy ending, but for a creature who's only known cages, the world can be just as cruel, just in different ways.
The duckling spends his first night of freedom hiding in the reeds. He's exhausted. He's frightened. He lies there in the dark, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the moor, wondering what new dangers await him. But at least no one is biting him. At least he can close his eyes without bracing for the next attack. In the morning, the wild ducks find him. These aren't the domesticated birds of the barnyard. They're free creatures, born in the wild, beholden to no one, living by their own rules in the marsh. They've never seen a fence or a feeding trough or a girl with a bucket of scraps. They answer to nothing but the seasons. The duckling watches them approach, bracing for the attacks he's learned to expect. He tenses his body, prepares to run, waits for the first bite. Instead, the wild ducks just look at him. They swim around him, studying his grey feathers, his ungainly body, his too large frame. Their expressions are curious rather than hostile. They've never seen anything quite like him before. "What sort of bird are you?" they ask. He doesn't know how to answer. He's never known what he is. The wild ducks confer among themselves and deliver their verdict. "You're remarkably ugly, but that doesn't matter to us, as long as you don't marry into our family." It's not acceptance. It's not welcome. It's tolerance. And only because he's so ugly they're confident he won't try to breed with them. His ugliness, ironically, is his protection. He's allowed to stay because he's too undesirable to be a threat. For the first time in his life, the duckling is left alone. He stays in the marsh for 2 days. 2 peaceful days where no one attacks him, no one kicks him, no one tells him to go away. The wild ducks ignore him, which is the closest thing to kindness he's ever experienced. Then 2 young wild ganders approach him. They're different from the others. Young, bold, curious, with the confidence of creatures who've never been told they don't belong. They haven't been out of their eggs very long, which is why they're so forward. They look at the ugly duckling not with disgust, but with something almost like interest. "Listen, friend," one of them says. "You're so ugly that we actually like you. Do you want to come with us and be a bird of passage? In another marsh nearby, there are some lovely wild geese, all sweet young ladies who can say quack beautifully. You're so ugly you might actually have a chance with them." It's a joke at his expense. They're laughing at him, not with him. But it's also an invitation, an offer to join them, to go somewhere new, to be part of something. No one has ever invited the duckling anywhere before. Before he can answer, the world explodes. The sound comes first, a crack like thunder, then another, then a dozen more in rapid succession. The 2 ganders crumple into the water without even time to cry out, their blood spreading across the surface in red clouds. Hunters. They've surrounded the marsh. Their guns fire from every direction, pop, 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 echoing across the moor. Birds fall from the sky like rain. The water churns with bodies and blood. Blue smoke drifts through the reeds like fog, carrying the smell of gunpowder and death. Andersen describes it in vivid, unflinching detail. This isn't a children's picture book scene of hunters in the distance. This is a massacre, rendered in close-up. The sounds of the guns, the splashing of the dogs, the screaming of the birds, the red water, the bodies floating among the reeds. The hunting dogs splashed about in the mud, splash, splash, bending the reeds and rushes in all directions. It was terrifying for the poor duckling. The duckling hides. He burrows into the reeds, pressing himself flat against the mud, trying to become invisible. He tucks his head under his wing, making himself as small as possible, and waits for death. The guns keep firing. The dogs splash through the marsh, retrieving the dead and dying, carrying them back to the hunters in their soft mouths. A hunting dog finds him. It's enormous, huge jaws, dripping with marsh water, tongue hanging out, eyes gleaming with predatory focus. The dog pushes through the reeds and stands directly over the trembling duckling, so close he can feel its hot breath against his feathers. The duckling doesn't run. Where would he go? He just holds still, heart pounding, waiting to feel those jaws close around his body. Another death among the many deaths happening all around him. The dog sniffs him. Its nose presses against his feathers, testing, evaluating, and then it leaves. The dog just turns and splashes away, looking for better prey. It doesn't even bite him. It doesn't consider him worth the effort of killing. You might think the duckling would feel relief. He just survived a massacre. A predator found him and chose not to kill him. He's alive when so many others are dead. But that's not what he feels. I am so ugly, he thinks, that even the dog won't touch me. His survival isn't a blessing. It's more evidence of his worthlessness. He's not even good enough to be eaten. The dog rejected him the same way everyone has rejected him, looked at him, judged him, found him wanting, moved on. He's learned to interpret even survival as failure. The shooting continues all day. The duckling doesn't move until evening, until the last guns have fallen silent and the hunters have gone home with their bags full of dead birds. Then he runs. He runs across the moor as fast as his legs will carry him. A storm rises out of nowhere, the wind howling, the rain coming down in sheets. He struggles forward through the darkness, looking for anywhere that might offer shelter, any place where he can stop running and rest. The wind is so strong he can hardly fight against it. Things only get worse and worse. Just before he collapses, he finds a cottage. It's a miserable little hut, so crooked and broken down that it doesn't know which way to fall, and so it remains standing. The wind shrieks around it. The rain beats against its walls. One of the doors has come loose from its hinges, hanging at an angle that leaves a gap at the bottom, just big enough for a small, desperate creature to squeeze through. Inside, it's warm. Inside, there's the glow of a fire, the smell of food, the sounds of creatures living comfortable lives. Inside, there's a cat, a hen, and an old woman who are about to teach the duckling a lesson worse than any beating.
Part 3. The Cottage. Sometimes the worst prisons don't have bars. Sometimes they have walls where no one speaks your language, and they call your language madness.
The cottage belongs to an old woman who lives with her 2 companions, a cat named Sonny and a hen called Chickabiddy Shortshanks. The old woman calls the cat Sonny and allows him great liberties. Sonny can arch his back and purr. When he's pleased, he can even make sparks fly from his fur if you stroke him the wrong way. These are his talents, his contributions to the household. Chickabiddy Shortshanks has short little legs. That's where her name comes from. And she lays excellent eggs. The old woman loves her like her own child. Together, the cat and the hen consider themselves the wisest creatures in the world. When they offer an opinion, they say, "We in the world think so," because as far as they're concerned, they are the world, or at least the only part of it worth considering. The old woman discovers the duckling in the morning. Her eyesight is very poor, and when she spots the grey shape huddled by her door, she thinks she's found a fat duck who's wandered in from the storm. "This is a lucky find," she says. "Now I shall have duck eggs, if it isn't a drake. We'll have to wait and see." So the duckling is given a trial period, 3 weeks to prove he can lay eggs, 3 weeks to demonstrate his value in terms the cottage understands. But no eggs come. The cat and the hen interrogate him. "Can you lay eggs?" the hen asks. "No." "Then hold your tongue." "Can you arch your back and purr?" the cat asks. "Can you make sparks?" "No." "Then you should keep your opinions to yourself when sensible people are talking." The duckling retreats to a corner and falls into what Andersen calls a bad humour. He's not being attacked here, that's something, but he's not being understood either. He's been measured by standards that have nothing to do with who he is, and he's been found worthless. Then he makes the mistake of sharing his feelings. He starts thinking about the outside, about fresh air and sunshine, about water sparkling in the light. He remembers what it felt like to swim, to dive beneath the surface, to feel the water close over his head. The longing becomes so strong he can't keep it inside. He tells the hen about it. "What's the matter with you?" she asks. "You have nothing to do. That's why you get these strange ideas. Lay eggs or purr, and you'll forget all about it." "But it's so lovely to swim," the duckling says. "So lovely to feel the water close over your head and dive down to the bottom." "Yes, that must be a great pleasure," the hen says dryly. "You must have gone crazy. Ask the cat, he's the wisest creature I know, whether he likes to swim or dive underwater. I say nothing of myself. Ask our mistress, the old woman. No one in the world is wiser than she. Do you think she wants to swim and feel the water close over her head?" "You don't understand me," the duckling says. "If we don't understand you, then who would? You surely don't think you're wiser than the cat or the old woman, not to mention myself. Don't give yourself airs, child. Be grateful for all the kindness you've been shown. Haven't you found a warm room and company you can learn from? But you're an idiot, and there's no pleasure in your company. Believe me, I speak for your own good. I tell you unpleasant truths, and that's how you can know who your real friends are. Just see that you learn to lay eggs or to purr and make sparks." "I think I'll go out into the wide world," the duckling says. "Yes, do," the hen says. This is a different kind of cruelty than the barnyard offered. In the barnyard, they attacked him for being ugly. It was brutal, but at least it was honest. They hated what they saw, and they made that clear. The cottage is subtler. The cat and the hen don't hate him. They simply cannot comprehend that anyone could want something they don't want. Their world is complete. Eggs and purring, warmth and shelter. Why would anyone need anything else? If the duckling doesn't fit into that world, the problem must be with him. His longing for water isn't a legitimate desire. It's a symptom of madness, something to be cured rather than understood. They're telling him that his deepest self, the part that loves the water, that feels most alive when swimming, is a mental illness. And they think they're helping him. That's almost worse than hatred. Hatred at least acknowledges that you exist. This kind of dismissal erases you entirely. tells you that your inner life is a delusion, that the things that matter most to you don't really matter, that you should simply become someone else. The duckling leaves. He's not driven out this time. The old woman would have let him stay indefinitely, a useless bird in the corner, not laying eggs, not purring, just existing. But he can't bear to remain in a place where his soul is considered a sickness. The duckling finds a lake. He swims. He dives. He lets the water close over his head, exactly as he described to the hen. And for a moment, just a moment, he's at peace. This is what he was made for. This is who he is. But the other creatures still avoid him. He's alone on the lake, alone in the marshes, alone as the days grow shorter and the leaves turn gold and brown and fall from the trees. Autumn settles over the world, and with it comes a deep, quiet loneliness that soaks into his bones. One evening, just as the sun is setting, a flock of birds rises from the reeds. The duckling has never seen anything like them. They're large and brilliant white with long, graceful necks that curve like questions against the orange sky. They spread their enormous wings, wings that seem impossibly wide, and lift into the air, crying out to each other in voices that pierce straight through the duckling's heart. He doesn't know what they are. He doesn't know their name. But watching them, he feels something he's never felt before. A longing so intense, it's almost painful. A recognition without understanding, as if some part of him is calling out to some part of them across a distance he can't measure. He stretches his neck toward them. He opens his beak and makes a sound he doesn't recognize, strange and wild, nothing like a quack. It startles him, this sound from his own throat. The birds fly south, spiraling higher and higher, away from the coming winter. They disappear into the sunset. The duckling dives deep into the water. When he surfaces, he's almost frantic with a feeling he can't name. He spins in circles on the lake, crying out after them, not understanding why their departure feels like grief, like losing something he never knew he had. He doesn't know who they were. He can't forget them. He doesn't know it yet, but he's just seen swans for the first time. He's just seen his own kind. All through what's coming, and what's coming is the worst yet. He holds on to the image of them rising into the sunset. Those beautiful, impossible creatures who flew towards something he couldn't see. Then winter arrives. And winter, in Andersen's world, doesn't just test you, it tries to kill you.
Part 4, The Frozen Pond. This is the chapter that doesn't make it into the picture books, the one where the children's story becomes something else entirely.
The cold comes fast and hard. Andersen describes the winter settling over Denmark like a siege. The sky turns grey and stays grey. The clouds hang low, heavy with snow. The air bites at everything it touches. And the lake, the duckling's refuge, the one place where he felt like himself, begins to freeze. The duckling has to swim constantly just to keep the water around him from turning solid. He paddles in circles all day and all night, round and round, fighting to maintain a small patch of open water in the middle of the growing ice. Every day, the circle grows smaller. Every night, the ice presses closer. He's exhausted. His legs ache from the endless paddling. His body is weakening from the cold and the lack of food. But if he stops, even for a moment, the water will freeze around him, and he'll be trapped. One night, he can't do it anymore. His legs give out. He stops paddling. The cold seeps into his muscles, into his bones, into the place where determination lives. He closes his eyes. By morning, he's frozen into the pond. The ice has closed around his body, locking him in place. He can't move his legs. He can't free his wings. He's trapped in the frozen lake like an insect in amber, slowly dying, unable to do anything but wait for the end. This is where most adaptations cut away. If they show the winter at all, they show a briefly sad duckling who quickly finds shelter, maybe a cozy barn or a friendly farmer. They don't show this. A creature frozen alive, imprisoned by ice, waiting to die. A peasant finds him in the early morning. The man is crossing the frozen lake on his way to work. He sees something grey stuck in the ice. A bird, still alive, but not for long. He takes pity on the creature. Using his wooden shoe, he breaks the ice around the duckling and frees him from the frozen prison. He tucks the duckling under his coat, against his body's warmth, and carries him home to his wife. In the cottage, the duckling slowly revives. The warmth seeps back into his body. The feeling returns to his legs. His heart, which had nearly stopped, begins to beat with something like hope. The farmer's children crowd around, excited by this strange bird their father has brought home. They've never seen anything like him. They want to touch him, to hold him, to play with him. But the duckling doesn't understand play. He only understands danger. When the children reach for him, laughing, he sees only hands coming to hurt him, the same hands that have always hurt him. Every touch in his life has been violent. Every approach has been an attack. He panics. He flaps wildly, desperately, knocking into the milk pail and splashing milk across the kitchen floor. The farmer's wife screams. He blunders into the butter tub, then into the flour barrel, emerging white and wild-eyed, more terrified than ever. The children laugh and try to catch him, which only makes his terror worse. The wife swings at him with a fire poker. He flaps onto the table, into the meal tub, out again. The whole cottage descends into chaos. It's almost comedic if you don't think about what's happening inside the duckling's mind. He's been given a second chance at shelter, at safety, at warmth, and he's destroying it because he can't recognize kindness. He's been hurt so many times that even genuine friendliness looks like an attack. The door is open. He escapes through it, back into the winter, back into the cold that almost killed him. But at least the cold is predictable. At least the cold doesn't reach for you with hands that might be trying to help or might be trying to hurt. At least the cold doesn't pretend. Andersen skips over the rest of winter in a single paragraph. It would be too sad to relate all the misery and hardship the duckling had to endure during that hard winter. Too sad to relate. Think about what that means, coming from a writer who's already shown us beatings, massacres, a mother's rejection, and a creature frozen into a pond. Whatever happened during those remaining months was worse than anything we've seen so far. The duckling survives. Not because he's strong, not because he's brave, not because he has some secret reservoir of resilience. He survives because he doesn't die. That's all. He hides in the reeds when he can. He finds what food he can. He endures cold that should have killed him night after night alone. Survival isn't always heroic. Sometimes it's just refusing to stop existing when everything around you is trying to end your existence. Then spring comes. The sun grows warmer. The ice melts. The duckling finds himself lying in the marshes among the reeds. And for the first time in months, the world doesn't feel like it's trying to kill him. He stretches his wings and realizes something has changed. His wings are strong now, much stronger than they were before winter. They're large and powerful, larger than he remembers, and they catch the air in a way they never used to. Without quite meaning to, he beats them once, twice, and suddenly he's rising, lifting off the marsh, climbing into the sky. He can fly. The duckling soars over the countryside, his new wings carrying him higher and faster than he ever imagined possible. Below him, he sees a garden coming into bloom, apple trees thick with pink and white blossoms, lilac bushes bending over a winding stream. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. It looks like a place where nothing bad could ever happen. He lands on the water, and then he sees them. 3 white swans gliding toward him across the stream. The same kind of birds he saw in autumn, the ones that flew into the sunset and took a piece of his heart with them, the ones he's thought about every day since, without understanding why. They're coming toward him. The duckling makes a decision. This is the moment that has been cut from every children's adaptation. This is the climax of the story, as Andersen actually wrote it. The duckling thinks, I will fly down to them, those royal birds. They will peck me to death because I, who am so ugly, dare to approach them. But it doesn't matter. It's better to be killed by them than to be bitten by the ducks, pecked by the hens, kicked by the servant girl, and suffer so much in winter. Read that again. He's not flying toward the swans hoping to join them. He's not approaching with hope, or curiosity, or even desperate longing. He's flying toward them, hoping they'll kill him. He has looked at his existence, the beatings, the rejection, the loneliness, the winter, and concluded that ending it is the best option available. He has decided that death at the beaks of beautiful creatures is preferable to continuing to live as himself. This is a suicide attempt. That's the climax of one of the most beloved children's stories in the world. A creature so broken by the cruelty he's endured that he swims toward death on purpose, bowing his head to receive the killing blows he's certain are coming. He lands on the water. He swims toward the swans. He bows his head low, waiting for the end. Kill me, he says, and sees his reflection. Looking back at him from the water is not a grey, ungainly duckling. Looking back at him is a swan, graceful, white, long-necked, beautiful. He's not a duckling. He never was. He was a swan egg that ended up in a duck's nest by accident. He was raised among creatures who could only see him as wrong, not because there was anything wrong with him, but because he wasn't one of them. He was a swan in a barnyard full of ducks, and they punished him for being what he was. The other swans don't attack him. They don't mock him or bite him or tell him to go away. They swim around him, stroking him with their beaks, rustling their feathers in welcome. They recognize him. They accept him. He's one of them. Children come running to the stream to throw bread to the swans. They see the new one and cry out, "There's a new swan, and he's the most beautiful of all. He's so young and handsome." The older swans bow their heads to him. The swan who was the ugly duckling feels something he's never felt before. He rustles his feathers, curves his slender neck, and thinks, "I never dreamed of such happiness when I was the ugly duckling." Andersen's final line, he felt quite glad of all the suffering and trouble he had gone through, for now he could better appreciate all the pleasure and happiness around him. It sounds like a happy ending. It sounds like all that pain was worth it. But there's one more thing you should know. the man who wrote this story, called it the story of his own life. He became one of the most famous writers in European history, celebrated, beloved, invited to palaces across the continent, and he never stopped feeling like the ugly duckling.
Part 5. The Man in the Mirror. Every fairy tale has an author, and sometimes understanding who wrote the story changes everything about what it means.
Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Ugly Duckling in 1843, and he told people explicitly what it meant. It is the story of my life. He was born in 1805 in Odense, Denmark, one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. His father was a shoemaker who made barely enough to survive, but who filled young Hans's head with fairy tales and built him a puppet theater from scraps. His mother washed other people's clothes and eventually drank herself into an early grave. His grandfather was confined to an asylum, and the young Andersen lived in terror that he would inherit the family madness. From the very beginning, he was marked as different. He was tall and gangly, with a prominent nose and hands that seemed too big for his body. He moved awkwardly, spoke strangely, didn't fit in with other children. He preferred putting on puppet shows and reciting poetry to playing normal games. While other boys roughhoused, he stood apart, watching, dreaming, already somewhere else. The other children thought he was bizarre. The adults didn't know what to make of him. At 14, he left for Copenhagen with almost nothing in his pockets, convinced he would become famous as a singer, dancer, or actor. He had no connections, no money, no training, just an unshakable certainty that he was meant for something greater than the Odense slums. Copenhagen was brutal. He auditioned for theatres. They laughed at his appearance. He tried to get work as a singer. His voice broke. He nearly starved, surviving on the charity of strangers who saw something in this strange, desperate boy, something worth preserving, even if they couldn't quite name it. A wealthy patron named Jonas Collin eventually took pity on him and funded his education. But Collin sent Andersen to a grammar school where he was surrounded by students half his age. A grown young man sitting among children, learning the basics he'd missed. The headmaster bullied him mercilessly for years, mocking his appearance, his poverty, his dreams. The message, from childhood through young adulthood, was always the same. You are ugly, you are strange, you do not belong. Then something changed. Andersen started writing. Novels at first, then plays, then, almost as an experiment, fairy tales. The fairy tales caught fire. By 1843, when he wrote The Ugly Duckling, Andersen was becoming one of the most famous writers in Denmark. His stories were being translated across Europe. He was invited to meet royalty. He dined with the King of Prussia, with Charles Dickens, with the leading intellectuals of his age. The Ugly Duckling had become a swan. But here's what nobody tells you about Andersen's life. The transformation didn't feel like transformation. He never stopped believing he was ugly. Photographs from throughout his life show a man who seems uncomfortable in his own skin, even at the height of his fame. His journals and letters are filled with anxieties about his appearance, fears that people were laughing at him behind his back, certainty that he was somehow fooling everyone. He fell in love repeatedly and was rejected every time. The great love of his life may have been Edvard Collin, the son of his patron. Andersen's letters to Edvard are so intense, so emotional, that many scholars read them as love letters. He wrote to Edvard, I long for you as though you were a beautiful Calabrian girl." Edvard pulled away, uncomfortable with the intensity. Andersen was devastated. He also fell for Jenny Lind, the famous Swedish nightingale soprano. She was beautiful, talented, everything Andersen admired. He proposed to her, and she called him brother and married someone else. Most biographers believe Andersen died without ever experiencing romantic love returned. The most famous storyteller in Europe, the man who invented the modern fairy tale, spent his life longing for connection and finding only admiration at a distance. Throughout his life, he collected praise the way some people collect stamps, hoarding reviews, saving letters of appreciation, needing constant reassurance that he mattered. The ugly duckling in him kept looking in mirrors, expecting to see the grey, ungainly bird. He wrote a story about becoming a swan, and he never believed it had happened to him. This changes what the story means. The sanitized versions tell us, "Be patient. Your inner beauty will shine through. The world will recognize your worth." Andersen's version tells us something more complicated. The duckling's transformation is real, but it doesn't erase the wounds. The swan remembers being beaten. The swan remembers his mother's rejection. The swan remembers wanting to die. The final line says he was glad of all the suffering because now he could better appreciate happiness. But is that true? Or is it what we tell ourselves to make the suffering bearable? A story we need to believe, whether or not it's accurate. Andersen lived the happy ending. He became beloved. He found his flock, and he spent his whole life feeling like a fraud, like someone who'd somehow tricked the world into thinking he was beautiful. That's not a tragedy. That's just honesty about how trauma works. The transformation is real. The duckling really does become a swan. The recognition is genuine. The welcome is warm. But the body remembers what it survived. The soul carries scars that don't show on the surface. You can become everything you dreamed of becoming and still flinch when someone reaches toward you. Still expect the blow. Still hear your mother's voice saying, she wishes you were far away. The real moral of The Ugly Duckling isn't believe in yourself. It's survive. Survive the barnyard. Survive the hunters. Survive the cottage where they tell you your soul is a sickness. Survive the frozen pond. Survive winter. Survive long enough to find your swans. The duckling didn't do anything to become beautiful. He didn't work on himself. He didn't grow into his potential. He was always a swan. He just had the misfortune to hatch in a duck's nest. His job wasn't to change. His job was to endure until circumstances changed around him. That's harder than the self-help version. It puts the burden on luck, on time, on finding the right pond. It means there's no guarantee. But it also means this. If you're the strange kid, the one who doesn't fit, the one whose soul wants something the people around you can't understand, your job isn't to become someone else. Your job is to survive until you find your flock. That's what Andersen knew. That's what he wrote. And that's what we've been editing out of the story for 180 years. Because it's easier to promise transformation than to acknowledge that the journey to get there might nearly kill you.
Andersen's statue sits in Copenhagen Harbour. Tourists take photos with it. Children climb on it. Most of them have heard his stories without knowing his name. They know the Little Mermaid. They know the Snow Queen, the Ugly Duckling. but they don't know the strange, lonely man who wrote them. I keep thinking about that moment in the story, the duckling looking down at the water, expecting to see the ugly thing he has always been, and seeing a beautiful swan instead. Andersen must have had moments like that, standing in a palace, dressed in fine clothes, celebrities wanting to meet him, and somewhere in his mind, the shoemaker's son who got laughed out of auditions, the boy who was told he'd never amount to anything. Both can be true at once. The swan and the duckling, the triumph and the wound. The ugly duckling isn't about beauty, it's about belonging. It's about the agony of being stuck among creatures who can only see you as wrong. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because you're not one of them. The duckling's tragedy wasn't his appearance, it was that he hatched in the wrong nest. His salvation wasn't becoming beautiful, it was finding his flock. We softened the story because we wanted it to hurt less. We wanted children to hear, be patient, you're beautiful inside, instead of, the world will try to destroy you for being different and you have to survive it anyway. Both messages matter, the gentle one for hope and the original one for truth. Somewhere right now, there's a kid who feels like the ugly duckling, misfit, wrong, wondering if the world will ever make sense and if anyone will ever understand what's going on inside them. The picture book version tells them to wait for their transformation. Andersen tells them something different. What you're feeling is real. The cruelty is real. The loneliness is real. And you're not crazy for wanting to swim when everyone around you says you should be laying eggs. Survive. Find water. Keep going. One day you'll look down and recognize yourself. And on that day, you'll understand why all the suffering was worth remembering. Not because it made you stronger, but because it taught you to recognize home when you finally found it. If this video helped you see beneath the surface of the story you thought you knew, subscribe to the Midnight Archives. We illuminate the dark corners of history, the stories that live beneath the ones we tell ourselves. Until next time, keep the candle lit.